Welcome, everyone. I'm Jesse Mogul. Thank you for tuning into the American Contingency podcast. Here at American Contingency, we are a united nationwide community of dedicated Americans ready to face any challenge that comes our way. Our mission is to inform you by equipping you with the knowledge and training you need to prepare for any man-made or natural disaster. Through active participation in our AmCon community, you'll have the opportunity to grow by learning from others' experiences and sharing your own. Together, we build resilience and strength through shared knowledge and mutual support. And as always, it's an honor and a privilege to have you here for the next 30 minutes or so. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump back to episode 36, where I was introducing you all to ways where you can talk about AmCon and preparedness with your friends, your neighbors, and your loved ones. Because admittedly, that episode started getting a little bit long and I didn't make it through all of my points. And then in episode 37, I chose to introduce situational awareness and how we could learn that and talk about that. And one of the most important things that we talk about here at AmCon is being able to articulate the value of preparedness. If you know people in your life who don't take preparedness as seriously as you, or maybe you're one of the newer members who just recently joined AmCon because you heard Tom Rigsby speaking with Mike Adams and his co-host Todd Pintner over on Decentralized TV, and you recently joined because you liked what Tom Rigsby had to say about American Contingency, and you're finding this whole idea of preparedness to be something that you absolutely want to get more into. And certainly the Decentralized TV and the content they talk about over there absolutely has some similarities and parallels to what we discuss here at American Contingency, which is why you were drawn to joining us in the first place. So now we want to connect you to the value that we bring and the value that you can introduce other people in your life to, so that you're not the only one who's hyped up for preparedness, for learning new skills outdoors, for the training and for the informing and the equipping. Because if you're the only one in your family who's excited about this, then not only will you feel isolated from the rest of your family as you get very excited at the dinner table about all the cool new things that you've learned, but it might be met with rolling eyes or, oh, we don't need to worry about that, or that's not that big of a deal, which could cause frustration in you because you know that this stuff is important, and it's why an entire organization like AmCon exists, and we are not the only ones, but certainly you are listening to this podcast, so we are the ones that you're drawn to. And when you go to articulate value, if you don't know how to do that in a way that doesn't engage people in an inappropriate way or cause them to get defensive, then what you'll end up doing is finding a lot of people who want to shut down what it is you want to talk about because they have a lack of knowledge, or they think that you're a prepper and you want to live in a bunker under the ground, drinking, your urine that's been filtered 7 times over. And while 10 years in a bunker may cause that need to drink 7 times over filtered urine, that is not what we are seeking in American Contingency. We're seeking for preparedness in a way where if you don't have electricity for 2 weeks because a tornado hits your community, or if a blizzard comes in and for 6 days you have no electricity, that you are prepared for that as much as one can be with the infinite amount of variables that can exist in any given situation. We want you to have thought through as many of those variables and have prepared for as many of those so that it can be relatively comfortable. And as Mike Lott said on like episode 3 or 4 back in the day, you're not stuck only eating beans and rice, because that doesn't sound like a comfortable way to exist for 14 days while you're waiting for your electric lines to go back up. And when we go to articulate value, we'll use a refrigerator, for example. I like refrigerators. They keep my produce chilled so that it lasts longer. It keeps my milk and my eggs and my cheese at the optimal temperature, so I don't have to worry about quicker let's say, spoilage that would occur if they were just going to be left out on a cabinet. I don't even know if you can leave mayonnaise or milk out on a cabinet for 24 hours without them going sideways. We know what civilization was like before the icebox was invented, like 100 years ago or something like that. And we definitely know what it's like to not have a refrigerator for even 24 or 48 hours if your electricity goes out and you can't access it out of fear that if you open it up, you'll let all the cold air out and everything will spoil even faster. So going to articulate the value of a refrigerator can be as simple as saying, hey, all of those things that are refrigerated at the grocery store are refrigerated for a reason. And we want to make sure that we're keeping our milk and our eggs and our cheeses at optimal temperature. Any condiments that we have opened that say refrigerate after opening, We're going to want to place them in there so that we're not constantly having to repurchase condiments that are necessary for us to enjoy our foods. I am able to cook food and then put them into airtight containers and put them in the refrigerator. And now I'm able to have leftovers and multiple meals out of one moment of preparing food. That's pretty good articulation of the value of a refrigerator. We all know how important a refrigerator is to us. Same thing with an air conditioning. Same thing with a heater. Same thing with electricity. There's value in a cell phone. There's value in a car. And we know how to articulate those values because we utilize those things on such a regular basis that it almost doesn't even take explanation to people for why these things are important in our lives. We just understand they are. But for people who might be coming from a culture where these things aren't as readily available, explaining the beautifulness of an air conditioner on a 107-degree day in Phoenix, Arizona, need only take turning that air conditioner off, opening up all your doors, and allowing that house to turn into an oven, and for you to be able to explain to somebody why air conditioners are so valuable. So let's discuss American Contingency and how we would articulate the value. And if you go back to episode 36, there was a lot of topics I discussed there. And I opened up with discussing about food and water storage, ensuring our basic needs during a storm, preparing for unexpected disruptions, and community support in times of crisis. You can say things such as, and here's one of the key things. If you take something that has recently happened in the news or in your community or in your region, and then you reference that as you go to discuss preparedness, you'll be able to create a connection with that person about something that maybe didn't happen to them, but happened near enough that it is now something that they have been alerted to. So if a tornado hits 7 counties over, it doesn't need to have come into my county for me to make it important to my neighbors. It need only have to have been in the area for them to have seen the destruction and for them to have questioned whether they're prepared for the pre-tornado, the during the tornado, and the post-tornado effects that they would then have to live through. And so something as simple as, hey, after that last storm, I realized how crucial it is to have a good stock of food and water at home. Do you have enough supplies to last if another storm hits so your family is prepared? A simple question like that opens the door for your neighbor to explain to you what it is they have done to prepare. They might very well be somebody who is prepared, who might be a very valuable member to American Contingency, might find these kind of conversations very enjoyable to share with you, not realizing that you are also into preparation. And if they're not into preparation, then this opens the door for you to start discussing ways that you've learned how to be prepared with food and water. We have trainings on food and water over in our training section of the website. If you go to all groups, you'll be able to find some of those, whether it's under AmCon training or whether it's just under food and water prep. I mean, there's a couple different members who actually put on classes that you'll be able to locate so that you'd be able to learn more about this. We prepare you by training you and teaching you very important, valuable information that while, yes, you can always go on YouTube and Google things and find it all over the place. The training that Denny G put up on Basics of Food and Water 101 will not only allow you to learn things, let's say the AmCon way, but now there's also groups that are established that you'll be able to ask direct questions to when it comes to finding out what other people have done to prepare, as well as being able to talk to your regional coordinator, other people that are in your county or your city group, that you're in your regional group, to find out specific things that they've done. I go on YouTube a lot to learn how to utilize different softwares. And the bummer about that is if something is confusing because the person who shot the video is very familiar with the software and they think that they're teaching it step by step, but inevitably, whether it's a software or whether it's hanging a barn door in my house, it always seems like there's one step on how to make sure that the thing is level or how to make sure that the software actually compresses the way that I want it to, where they've somehow skipped over that step, just assuming everybody knows how to level that metal bar. You got to connect to the wall in order to make sure that your barn door doesn't just slide back and forth all willy-nilly. They miss that part. And then I'm stuck over here trying to problem solve it on my own, which can take me hours of figuring out, or frustration that causes me to just ditch the project altogether for 2 weeks. And then when I finally feel like I have enough patience, I go back to the barn door and I'm able to hang it. But it would have been a lot cooler if I could have just gone and talked to a couple people who had put up barn doors. They could have told me what they did to overcome the leveling issue that I felt frustrated around. And now I have talked to somebody directly with experience in this one particular area that's been able to meet me through that frustration over to the accomplishment that I sought from the moment I decided I wanted to hang my own barn door. And that's why YouTube videos might want to show you things. We actually introduce you to ways of doing them and with people who can help guide you through those frustrating parts. Home security is another really valuable one. We talked about securing your home against storm damage, protecting your family and your belongings, a community watch program. A simple question to your neighbor such as, I've thought about starting up a neighborhood watch program. Just keep an eye on others' homes during and after storms. Keep an eye on just people who might be driving through the neighborhood, scoping things out. Have you ever been involved in something like that? A simple question. Have you ever been involved in something like that? Opens up people to discuss their knowledge of a community watch program. Because some people might think it means that every single night they got to walk around the neighborhood with a flashlight and always be looking over what's going on and put cameras out. And they might think it's a 20-hour-a-week responsibility. When in reality, it might just mean that once a month, 30 different people all take their day and walk around at dusk to make sure that things don't look nefarious. It may be way more than they think, but until that conversation started, you won't have an opportunity to even gauge their perspective on a community watch program. And we have trainings around community watch programs. We can send you over to the community watch program site. There's a lot of different packets of information that will teach you how to contact local law enforcement. And then you'd be able to talk to other members who've started their own community watch programs. And some of the hurdles that they didn't see coming that they ultimately overcame, more than likely with help from other AmCon members, and now they can then share that knowledge with you. So you can mention how American Contingency helps people set up and support community watch programs, simply because there's going to be people in your region who have done this. And when you go through the new member training and we walk you through how to find your local region, how to find maybe your county or your city group, then you are able to immediately connect with those people. You're able to follow them so that your feed, which is an extremely important value opportunity with an American Contingency, your home feed that you see whenever you first log in is going to be your opportunity to connect with people from all around the country, and specifically with people in your city, your county, your region. You're able to see the things that are important to others that are in close proximity to where you live. It doesn't mean you can't go join the Northeast one if you've got a cousin up there and you just want to know what's going on up in the Northeast by paying attention to what the Northeastern people are talking about in their group. By all means, feel free to do that. But also make sure you're connecting with people in your local area so that your feed is full of people who are going to be discussing things that are going to be more of a proximity to where you live. And these are the kinds of questions and value propositions that you can bring to other people so that they too understand why it's important to be thinking about these. Mobility and evacuation plans was the next stage that I did not get to in the last podcast, number 36, because I get a little bit long-winded, and I was admittedly very excited about this kind of stuff because I just have gotten into it over the last couple of years because Tom Rigsby is a member of the family. And the more I talked to him about this, the more it just seemed like a very exciting thing to be involved in as far as making sure that I can sleep at night knowing that I'm as prepared as possible. So let's discuss mobility and evacuation plans. And if you want more information about home security or you want more information about food and water storage, go back to episode 36. Listen to that. I talk about it in depth. Literally, I think that episode went like 45 minutes. This one's already at 14, and I'm just in the review stage of episode 36. So number 3, the mobility and evacuation plans. Having a quick evacuation plan. You can talk to your loved ones or neighbors as simply as saying, do you have an evacuation plan ready in case you need to leave your home quickly? It's something I've been working on. This opens up an opportunity for you to discuss where some local storm shelters would be, local routes that you would take to get out of your area, knowing that if it's a route you are familiar with, that means that everybody else in your area is also familiar with it. We have a street near me called Wall Triana. I call it Triana. Wall Triana. Maybe it's Triana. I don't know. The locals would tell me I pronounce it incorrectly all the time, and I still pronounce it the way I prefer to. But either way, and you leave my neighborhood, that road is right there, and that's the road everybody else is going to be on. And they're either going to be trying to go up to 72, or they're going to be trying to go out towards that main state road that takes people through Ardmore and out into Tennessee. But either way, I mean, yeah, you can take Klutz and you can certainly go up to Capshaw and go left to right. But again, Capshaw is a very important road. There's going to be a lot of people there. You can take Klutz the other way and come out near the Walmart, but that's going to basically take you right up to Triana again. And now you're going to be dealing with all the people who are there. So if you know the route, lots of other people know the route. So let's discuss routes before we need to know other ways around the routes, which other people might also know. So the evacuation plan might also need to have a discussion around when would you decide to leave? And is there a time where you might hunker down a little bit longer to let all the initial waves of traffic evacuate and then you go in behind them, or do you leave way ahead of them? But either way, opportunity for conversation. We can share about how American Contingency emphasizes the importance of having a clear and practiced evacuation route. And again, practicing that evacuation route at midnight when there's nobody out on the road is not going to be the same as whenever everybody's out on the road. And I live in a community that has grown way too fast for their britches, and they are not prepared for the current traffic we have during our rush hour, that 3:30 to 6:30 range. It's already sitting in the same light 6 different times. Imagine what it's like when everybody's trying to rush out of here because a storm's coming and everybody wants to get as far away from it as possible. You're going to be sitting in some of those lights 10, 15, 20 times if you're moving at all. So it's important to know whether evacuating is actually a sound strategy or staying in place and just hunkering down here and figuring it out in your own home is the better strategy. Also, bug out bags. Over in the training, I was recently there, and Denny G, who was our head of training, was asking people to shoot some videos about their bug out bags and what's in them, and in providing lists of things that they have found to be important. Because what's important in a bug out bag, which would be your backpack that you would take to leave your house or leave your car very quickly. It would have the essentials that you would need in order to be able to survive to get to the next stage of your preparation or where you would need to go. Tom likes to talk about how what's in his pockets gets him to his vehicle, what's in his vehicle gets him to his house, and what's in his house gets him to his evacuation destination. Do you have that strategy built up? So something as simply as saying, I recently put together a bug out bag for each family member, including our pet. Do you have something similar in case you need to leave your house in a hurry? Because a lot of people might be thinking about their kids and might be thinking about them, but are you thinking about your dog or your cat or your parakeet or, I don't know, your chinchilla? I mean, if you're going to be leaving your house because you think something horrible is going to go down there, you're probably not wanting to leave anything else with a heartbeat either. And you certainly don't want to be scrambling around the house looking for your lizard food or your dog or your cat food and their medications. And I don't know, do they need little things for their paws if they're walking over rough terrain so that they don't hurt their feet? Probably something that you would want in your bug out bag. So we want to be talking to other people about these items so that we can make sure that they're prepared. Because if you're the only one running out of your house with a bug out bag while everybody else is standing there being like, I hope there's enough water and food there for everyone, you did not think ahead far enough. You do not want to be carrying everybody else's essentials. And that goes, I don't care if your kid's 4 years old. Teach them how to put a backpack on that can hold some bottles of water and some snacks for them. Because if you're already carrying a bunch of yours and then maybe even things in your hands because you're literally getting out of there with whatever might need to happen in case your house gets swept down a river, you certainly do not want to also be in charge of your 4-year-old, your 7-year-old, and your 11-year-old's backpacks. You've got enough on your back already. They need to be able to carry their own. And I know I make jest when I say something about a house going down a river, but I remember putting on our social media like a year or two ago when Yellowstone was having all that flooding. Somebody's house was right on a river's edge, and that thing got sucked right into the river, almost like has one whole piece. And here's this house just bobbing down the river. Now, I'm sure it got just decimated by the current over time. But man, that was a whole house that just got sucked right into that raging river. So you never know what might happen in your own region once you start to follow people and connect with people, whether that's southeast, south, northeast, southwest, or north, northeast, northwest, which is how we've broken up the country into those 6 different geographical units. Everybody's going to have their own things that they're concerned about. The Southwest, not so concerned with blizzards. Northeast, absolutely concerned with blizzards. Although I do remember leaving Los Angeles once to drive to Vegas and getting to the top of a mountain and there being snow up there. So you never know. You just never know. I've got enough water in my car to at least keep 3 or 4 people sustained for 2 days. And that's just my own desire to keep enough water in my car for me. But there's so much water in my car that if anybody needed to get hydration, they would have that opportunity. Also, how are you keeping your vehicle ready? A question like, it's always good to have your car ready for a quick getaway. Do you keep yours stocked with emergency supplies? I have a first aid kit in mine. I try not to ever let my gas tank get below half. Definitely don't let it get below 100 miles. No. And that's just, I don't want to get in my car and need gasoline if I've got to make it to somewhere in a hurry. I might not think I might need to get somewhere in a hurry. I might not think I'll be late for that meeting on Friday when it's Monday, but I never know. So I'm not letting my gas tank get below 100, and I really aim to keep it above half. So an engagement strategy could be discussing how AmCon advises people keeping vehicles maintained and stocked with fuel maps, first aid kits. When we talk about this, we have a whole mobility group. We have mobility trainings. So certainly there are opportunities for you to learn more about this just in the members only site. And then certainly, how much fuel do you keep in your garage? I'm not asking you to keep 100 gallons, but certainly there are ways of keeping 10 or 20 gallons in your garage. I have 1 gallon thing for my lawnmower, but I also have a 5 gallon that's just for topping up my car. If I were to need it, 5 gallons of gas would roughly get me about another 120, 140 miles. And if you're trying to evacuate and you're in a stop and go situation, you're going to be burning fuel, but not moving very far. So it's going to be important for you to have thought about that too, because if you're evacuating, so are a lot of other people. So let's move from mobility and evacuation plans over to medical preparedness. And for a lot of people, they are on medications or they have special medical needs that need to be thought about ahead of time. And so if you know that there's someone in your neighborhood or a loved one in your family that perhaps they are in a wheelchair, or they need to make sure that their medications are chilled so that they are able to get their insulin shots if they're diabetic when they need them. There are certain things that you need to be thinking about ahead of time, because I'm not very familiar with insulin because nobody I am directly in contact with utilizes that medication, but I certainly know from watching some TV shows where they got into these kind of preparation moments, keeping insulin refrigerated is extremely important. And in fact, I think in the book 1 Second After, there's a whole thing about the lead protagonist, the main guy. I'm pretty sure his daughter has diabetes and needed to have insulin and needed to be chilled. And I think that she ultimately ends up passing away. And I hope I didn't just run that for anybody who hasn't read the books yet. I was just at that part, Jesse. Why did you run it? No, his daughter does not die because of a lack of insulin years after the EMP goes off in the atmosphere. That is absolutely not what happens. But again, it's thinking ahead about making sure that your medications are chilled. So when we get into medical preparation, are you keeping your medications at the optimal temperature? So you could be something like, hey, what do you do about your medications if there's a long-term power outage or evacuations? It's something I think about, something I worry about. And then you can discuss strategies the American Contingency uses for managing medications and health supplies during emergencies. Again, there are forums on the website where you can go ask people questions such as this, and certainly people in your own region and in your city-state groups that you will be friending and putting into your feed are going to be able to answer questions about this as well, because highly unlikely that you're the only person who has to think about keeping medications at an optimal temperature. Also, keeping your medical records handy, which we'll sort of discuss whenever I go over essential documents here in a few minutes. But you want to ask people, have you been making sure all your medical records are up to date and easily accessible? Say it's just something I think about. Do you have digital copies of your medical records in case you were to need to leave your house? Like, do you know your blood type? Like, this is a pretty important thing to know. Type O negative is mine. It's very important that you know your blood type, because you might need blood or somebody might need blood, and then you're able to either know that you can donate blood to them, or you'll be able to let a medical professional know what kind of blood you need to be transfused with, so that for whatever reason you are now able to get back to your optimal health. And then, of course, first aid training and first aid kits. Do you have a good first aid kit at home? Have you ever thought about taking a first aid course? Especially if you are newer to American Contingency and you haven't taken a CPR course recently, you aren't certified in CPR, or you haven't taken a first aid course recently and you don't have an updated certificate. Spit that out 4 times fast. If you don't have an updated certificate of completion, again, if you're not a medical professional, you probably don't need that certificate, but it would give you some peace of mind in knowing that you could make a tourniquet if somebody were to get cut while you were on a hike. Could you splint a broken bone? Would you be able to build makeshift crutches if somebody stumbles and twists their ankles? Especially if you're a parent, I would think that this would be important, because you can't necessarily carry your kids out of the woods depending on the terrain or what you're already carrying or their weight and age. So understanding first aid training, having first aid kits. I have multiples of them. I remember making a joke on one of these episodes not too long ago. Well, we're at episode 38 now, so it may have been a long time ago. But I remember saying that I went to go open up a first aid kit that I'd had in my garage for like a year, and everything was still wrapped in plastic and separated. And so I had to go through and unwrap everything and put it into its proper box. And I didn't even realize that it needed to be done. I literally thought I was just going to open up this backpack and all the first aid supplies were going to be where they were supposed to be, ready for my use. And that was not the case. So you do not want to need that first aid kit, and the first time you open it is the first time you've needed it. And now all of a sudden everything is wrapped in plastic and separated from one another. And now you're dealing with that on top of the stress of the first aid situation happening in front of you. So let's make sure that not only are we getting first aid kits, but that we're talking to people about how to utilize these first aid kits, getting training around these. Your regional coordinator, your state, your city, your county coordinator will know places where they have gone or they've directed people to go in order to make sure that you get the best knowledge. It's not enough to just sign up for any old thing that you Google on the internet. You want to make sure you're going to one that's going to be able to provide the optimal knowledge in an amount of time that fits into your schedule. Because the worst thing would be to go to a first aid class, spend 3 hours there, walk out knowing how to use gauze and Band-Aids, but what you really need to know how to make a tourniquet and how to make makeshift crutches. How would you tie off a severed carotid artery or something of that nature? Yeah. That may not seem plausible sitting in your comfy house right now or driving down the road as you listen to me, but certainly if you find yourself in one of those situations, you do not want to be the one running around trying to figure things out. Like, I don't know, just covered in leaves. Let the dog lick it. Don't they have really healthy saliva for that kind of thing? You want to be the person who knows what's going on so that you can be the person who can take charge in that situation and lead the group out from that medical emergency toward safety. Then we'll discuss essential documents. And this one I think is important because for the longest time, I thought I was good to go on this one because I had my passport, my birth certificate, my social security card, some backup credit cards, and some cash and some coins all gathered into one particular area of my office. And then I realized that not only was that area of my office not necessarily the most easily accessible space in my office, meaning if something was going on and all of a sudden a tornado touched down across the 2 blocks down, do I have time to run upstairs, get into my closet, and grab out this one waterproof box that I had it in? And now all my stuff's in there, but my family stuff's not. So now are they going to have to go into each one of their offices or bedrooms, finding their birth certificate, their social security card, their passport, along with any kind of money or any kind of backup hard drives that they would want. So I made it my goal to get everybody's stuff into the same waterproof box and put that downstairs in the office that's much more readily accessible should there be a need to get out quick. I do still have a box in the office where I put my backup hard drives that don't always need to be connected to the computer, so I make sure that those things are all in the same waterproof box, along with any other tech or any other important things that, while important, don't necessarily have the same hierarchy of desire to get out of the house with as my passport, birth certificate, and social security card. You can certainly get all three of those items replaced, but it's not easy. And if you were to get into a situation where you need to prove identity in order to access a storm shelter or to get a rental car or something of that nature, I would rather have a backup credit card or two, some cash, some coin, and my social security card, my passport, and my birth certificate all in the same place, so that if for some reason I did lose my driver's license, I would still be able to prove identity, because you just never know when that might be necessary. So I make sure that those are there. And as simple as saying, I recently organized all of my important documents like passports and birth certificates into the same space. Do you have a system for keeping these safe in your home? Waterproof box or safe or something like that? Just a question like that will open up an entire conversation with your loved ones about where are they keeping these. Like, if they don't know where they're keeping them, then they're definitely not going to be able to get to them if they're in an emergency situation. And ripping through your office while a river's flooding in your backyard or a hurricane is starting to creep into city limits is not the time to be looking for birth certificates. There's going to be concerns about water and food and shoes and backup clothing like underwear and socks that you're going to want to be paying attention to, which, yes, should be in your bug out bag and certainly should have a backup pair in your car. But if for some reason you don't and you keep those in a waterproof container that's sealable in your garage, that might be where your attention is desired much more than birth certificates and social security cards when you're looking to bug the heck out. So just think about hierarchy of needs here. We want the identification paperwork. So we want that stuff. But in the moment of getting out of the house, we want that to be a foregone conclusion that we know where it is and we're able to get it into our car. We do not want to have to sit there and tear through our house finding these things while we're also needing to get jackets and socks and undies and shoes and food and water and all the rest of that stuff into our vehicles. So there's going to be a lot of things that you can pre-think about that would then free up your mind to start thinking about other things as you're looking for that quick evacuation, or just being able to get everything into the same safe space in your house. If the tornado's coming and you're all holed up in a tiny little closet, do these important papers exist in that closet? Do you have your shoes? Do you have your socks and undies? So that's your essential documents. Same with digital copies. I'm asking somebody, do you have digital copies of your important documents? It's a great backup in case something happens to the originals. All of my important documents have been digitized, and then I have a whole separate email account that exists completely only to me. Nobody else knows the address to this email at all. Nobody would even remotely think to use this. It's not even words. It's just like a series of things that I remember that are, again, stored safely so that I could access this email account. And in this email account are digital copies of pictures that I have taken and then uploaded and emailed myself into this special email that's only accessible by me and nothing else. It literally just sits there, and it is what it is. But that's where you'll find copies of birth certificates and social security cards, driver's licenses, insurance documents, anything that's important paperwork wise. And also, I've been able to utilize that email address to also save digitized photos of things that are important to me. Videos. Did you know this about your home insurance? You don't necessarily have to have all the receipts from your belongings in order to be able to file a claim, but a simple video of you walking through, and you can shoot this video on your phone, and then you can just upload it over into an email. Again, it might mean that don't take a 5-minute long one, because that's just might be too big to email, but you could take little 15-second videos of, hey, this is this desk, this is that desk, this is what's in the closet, here's a video of all my TVs, and it's just a 10-second video of each of your televisions so that you can get name or model number or brand, so that when you go to file an insurance report for your house that's been, decimated by whatever, that you're able to prove ownership of these items. And you can simply email these videos to yourself in this special email address that I have just instructed you to go create for the digitized copies of all of your important documents. So now you've literally got pictures that you don't want to lose in case a hard drive were to go away. There's folders, especially if you're using Gmail or some of these other ones. They give you 15 gigs of space. You could upload photos there. If you've got a ton of photos and they take up a ton of space, you can compress those on websites like tinypng or tinyjpeg.com, and you can now compress all these photos so you could get more in there. You could use Handbrake to compress any videos that you might have of your personal belongings that you want to be able to access when you go to file a claim for your homeowner's insurance. This will compress videos much smaller. It'll take 1 gig and turn it into like 100 megabytes. Now you're able to have a lot more storage in that email address in order to be able to access those things later on. And I know when you're sitting in your comfy little home, it might seem preposterous to be thinking about some of this stuff. The best time to fix a leaky roof is when it's sunny outside. The best time to prepare for inclement weather is whenever it's beautiful outside. So be thinking about ways that you can be storing your digitized copies. And again, if you just go on the internet and type in, compress JPEGs, compress MOV. Handbrake is the one I like to use because I do a lot of video editing, and that allows me to compress videos. And then tiny PNG and tinyjpeg.com are free resources where you can literally upload 10, 20, 30 pictures at a time. It'll compress them, and then it'll give you the opportunity to then download it, and then you can go ahead and email those things to yourself. Take these videos, take these pictures, do that. Get digitized copies of all of your important documents. Take these pictures and send them into an email that nobody else has access to. Therefore, you don't have to worry about hackers or passwords or any of that stuff, because nobody would even know this email exists. So don't make it something that's obvious, like Jesse Mogul's important documents at gmail.com. That would never be the URL for this. And then emergency contact information. I'm going to close up on this one because the smartphones have actually made us really stupid. And it's no fault of the smartphone. The smartphone's it exists because it's supposed to show us and allow us to experience the world in a much more effective or efficient manner, fast communications and connections and all these different apps. But one of the things that it's done is it's taken a lot of that brain power that we used to use to learn our streets. Now we can just jump on Waze, Google Maps, Apple Maps, and just throw it in. And we might like to do that because it allows us to know how long it's going to take to get to a destination. But it'll also cause us to look down for when our turn's coming, which makes us not learn street names if we're new to an area. It makes us not learn just the general grid of the city because we can just look down at the phone and it'll tell us where to go. It does the same thing for phone numbers. And it's really important that you have at least the top 2, 3, 4, 5 emergency contact phone numbers memorized. It is imperative that you teach this to your children, your kids, or your loved ones. Because if you don't know the phone number of your husband or your wife or your sons and your daughters and your grandma and your grandpa, and you need to reach them and you're not utilizing your own phone, or you're actually, in a situation where now everybody's using landline phones, not knowing those numbers is going to haunt you in the future. So do you have emergency contact information readily available? And you could bring it up the way I just did. And you can also say it's crucial to have all your emergency contacts updated, easily accessible. Do you have a list ready? Have you had it, what do they call it whenever you wrap like a piece of paper in plastic? How do I not know that word? What an interesting word to have slipped my mind. But whenever laminated. Thank you very much, brain. I just knew it'd take a couple seconds. You can always laminate emergency contact information and lists, and you can put those in your bug out bag. You can have those readily available in your car. You can show your kids where you keep those. You can put those in your kids' bug out bag. And obviously still having them memorize your number, your partner's number, having those kind of things memorized, because it's going to be extremely important that they're able to access you even if their phone is not there, the batteries died, they lost it, it was stolen, whatever, they need help, they need to be able to reach you. And you can bring it up like that. Like, man, what would happen if you lost your phone and you had to borrow somebody else's? Do you know your partner's, your husband or your wife's phone number? Do your kids? Does your husband or wife know yours? By simply asking these questions and allowing their mind to create their own scenarios, you're able to introduce the topics that American Contingency talks about so frequently, and you're able to talk about American Contingency in a way where it won't come off as a bunch of doomsdayers who want to live in bunkers drinking 7 times over filtered pee water, because that's not what we're about. But unfortunately, that's what media and that's what some of those TV shows back in the day, like Preppers, certainly painted people who want to be prepared as. Where, it's like these crazy kooks who want to live in underground caves like, hermits and groundhogs. And while there are certainly those people, and I don't fret upon them at all, hey, you do you, man. You want an underground bunker? Make that happen for yourself. And then there's other people who are like, yeah, I'd really just like to have, a couple gallons of water and food for each one of my loved ones in my house for each day we might be without electricity. How many days? 7 days? Cool. We can do some math. We can explain to you the cost-benefit analysis on what you could be putting into that food and water storage area of your home. And now you can sleep well at night knowing that you're ready to rock and roll if the need be. A lot of people are going to have their own opinions on this kind of information and these kinds of topics. But ultimately, if you don't help your neighbor and your loved ones, then one day you're going to be the one stuck with the only bug out bag in your crew, or you're going to be the only one in the cul-de-sac who's got the food and water. And day 3, 4 hit, and people are going to come knocking on your door because you always seem like the smart one who would be prepared. And are you really going to want to turn away your thirsty, hungry, crying neighbors in those moments of need? Are we ultimately trying to keep them from doing something nefarious? Day 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 without food can cause a lot of people who seemed pretty rational when their refrigerators were operational and their air conditioners were working. Yeah, those people are rational. A person who hasn't had a lot of water or food in 7 days, they're going to lose a lot of that rationality you've come to know and love. So these are opportunities to talk about AmCon, to articulate our value, because it's something about us brought you in. And again, whether it was from Tom being on the Mike Adams show, or whether it was this podcast, whether it was something that you discovered on the internet, maybe somebody introduced you to us and you joined and you're not really sure what's going on, then this is an awesome opportunity to take what you've learned here on the podcast and go talk about it with people in your house. Go over to our online courses and click on that AC100, which is the new members onboarding training. Absolutely take that. It'll show you how to make your feed a living, breathing organism where you're able to connect with people in your city, state, county, region, within the proximity of where you live, so that you're able to get actionable advice and knowledge from people who live in your area who've probably gone through some of the same things that you're concerned with. The time to take care of things is when you don't need to be taking care of things. We get car insurance and homeowners insurance when nothing is wrong with our car and nothing is wrong with our house. We make sure that our health insurance is paid every month when nothing is wrong with us, because on the chance that we actually need those things, we want to know that we've gotten all of the T's crossed and all of the I's dotted. And that's what I've been seeking to teach in episode 36 and now 38 about these topics. It's not enough just for you to be prepared. We want to encourage your neighbors, your friends, and your family to be prepared. We want them to join American Contingency, because we're going to be highlighting these shared concerns, these common sense preparations. They're common to us, but common sense is only common when enough people start talking about it that you're sort of like, how did you not already hear about this? That's what we're seeking to do here, to make these topics such a common occurrence in our society that it almost seems like common sense to have, 3 gallons of water per person per day, and to be prepared for having enough rations of food for yourselves to be able to get to 2,000 calories a day, to have a backup generator, to have an evacuation route, or to have 20 gallons of gasoline waiting in the garage in case you need them. The more people who talk about this, the more common it gets, and then the more common sense that it'll sound, and the more people will just naturally be gravitating toward learning about this and joining our organization, because we literally exist to help people just like you get up off the couch and take charge in their lives. You can make a difference during emergencies. You can make a difference on any given Tuesday, and it comes from preparing so that you're able to respond, you're able to help other people recover, and we do this through the training, the equipping, the sharing, and through all of it, we grow together. Whether you're discussing food and water, home and security, mobility, evacuation plans, medical preparedness, essential document downloads and uploads, and even that little email address thing I just discussed, you can engage others in meaningful conversations about community resilience and preparedness, and you can do it in a way where they don't feel attacked or bombarded by information, where they feel like you genuinely are concerned about their well-being, and that's going to open them up to having conversations with you well beyond the first time. And in fact, you might find the most amazing ally lives right next door. And how they got to become your number one ally was simply how you chose to engage with them around these topics at the onset of the conversation. So when you're ready to prepare, grow, and share by building the skills, the network, and confidence to be ready for whatever comes next, join us at AmericanContingency.com. If you're already a member, log in, take the training, connect with people, follow people, get your feed alive. If you're not a member, thank you for listening to this podcast. Come to AmericanContingency.com, see what our website offers, join. It's so affordable. It's laughable how affordable this is, because we're here when you're ready, and we'll keep the fire going for you so you can find your way. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.